Hi, thank you, Gary, for this and for joining me today. I've been looking forward to this conversation about emotional agility and rigidity. How have you been? How has your journey been like? If you can give us just a glimpse since the lockdown, how has it been like for you?
Yeah, well, it's been as for many of us, each with different unique challenges, right?
Yeah.
It's been challenging. It's been enjoyable, and there's been good days and bad days, right? I think probably me and my wife have two small kids. That places a whole different challenge when they're not at school. And it took us a while to sort of recalibrate and understand how we as a family would choose to navigate this. And the only thing we had to fall back on really is the strength of that family, the strength of our own identity and our own values, what's important to us, and that sort of guided our decision making. I think for Lisa and I, my wife, as the two adults in the house, I think it's central to everything has been lowering our expectations. So of ourselves, of our work, of what we expect normally from the kids, whether it's academically or otherwise, and just expecting when we wake up in the morning to have struggle, to have challenge. So then those days when you don't, and obviously the weather's been blissful, so those days when the sun is shining, they feel quite extra special then. So instead of carrying all that sort of frustration around this mounting of, oh, we haven't done this and we haven't done that, and then that carries into the next day, we've lowered all of those and communicated those to everyone. We work with everyone around us, and that's definitely led to a far more sort of peaceful, joyous house, as much as we can be in this kind of situation, really.
Yeah, true. And I think even though we are all in the same storm, we are not kind of in the same boat, and everybody's kind of reacting to the situation differently. And one thing I know is there's this world outside that we can't sort of control, but to some level, the world that is inside us, we could control it. We could do something to it to kind of focus or be at peace. Try to, how I was reading something about this personality. How does this come in play? How your personality, how you view yourself, or who you are as a person can actually help you by knowing who you are deal with a situation like this? Well,
that's integral to it, right? So especially with people that are living on their own, as like a lot of your friends will be, they'll be around others, but ultimately it's just yourself you've got to follow around with. There's no distractions, and that connection with, that understanding with yourself is understanding of yourself is I suppose fundamental to your ability to be resilient, your ability to handle change, your ability to move towards the things that bring you peace, the things that bring you joy. And I suppose the most important one, and it's the one, especially as a sort of late 30s man, it's like really unpopular to talk about or whatever, and a real challenge people talk about is love. How compassionate you are for yourself, how much you let yourself off the hook, how much you sort of reduce those perfect standards, how much you sack off your goals for a wee while you navigate this. How much compassion you show yourself, really. And I think it's almost proportionate, those that are able to do that, are able to show themselves a bit of compassion and navigating this change the best. They're more flexible, more agile in the face of that change, and those that don't are far more rigid and far more fragile. And the great irony, of course, is they're far more vulnerable. And it's those that show themselves compassion, have vulnerability, and show vulnerability and are vulnerable. And those that don't are far more rigid in the face of change, and that's where anger and frustration and apathy and boredom and all these other feelings can feel like they're taking over you, if you don't have that level of self-awareness and self-compassion.
Yeah, true. I think that was true for me beginning, because at the start of it, if you're someone like me, I've listened to dozens of motivational speakers on YouTube every time, and so starting this, it felt like I'm ready for this, and I was just going like full force, and then it just hit me. I had to break, and I realized, just like Susan Davis said, that rigidity is in the face of adversity is toxic, and not listening to myself and not accepting the situation and just going just like that because I think I can, not finding my own rhythm. It kind of took a toll on me, and I'm glad I had it at an early stage to be able to listen to myself and not break down totally. Just because,
And it's such an easy thing to say, right? Is be compassionate towards yourself. Very, very, very hard to do. So my story, it's just quite funny, really. I wouldn't have thought that the age I am now, that I'd be talking about emotional agility or whatever, like talking about my feelings. Be the last person. Yes, my family and my sisters and that. I'll be the last person for them that would talk about something like that. I took myself very seriously. I was quite intense, very goal driven. Really cared about what other people thought about me. I sort of like my life was wrapped around that. I didn't have a sense of identity, so all I had was, and there was no Facebook, or well, there might have been, but I certainly wasn't on it back then. So all you had was, when you step out your front door, what people think of you. And I was a great mind reader. I used to know what everyone was thinking, and of course I was wrong. I used to make a great deal of assumptions. And actually, at points, if I'd face any sort of, I don't know, guilt, shame, embarrassment, all that kind of stuff, I'd shut myself away for a couple of weeks before I'd pluck up sort of bravery to get out there again and brave the new world. And I suppose the irony now is that's the sort of adversity we're in now. I think Susan David's line is, courage is fear walking. My journey, and I think it's typical of many people's journey that I coach, actually, is those feelings of doubt, fear, anger, anxiety, worry, all that, that owned me, it consumed me as a child, as a young person. I then went through a period of my life where I pretended I didn't have any of those, that I wasn't scared. Like one of the first things in lockdown, actually, that we said to Felicity, our daughter, is I said, Daddy's really, really scared right now, and it's okay to feel scared. It's okay to talk about that. I suppose the difference is now, at this time in my life, is I own those feelings. So acknowledge them. I have a name for them. I bring them into being and can talk about them. And as a consequence, you're able to deal with any adversity. In fact, everything becomes a lot simpler, to be honest with you, because it's not like someone else or something else is controlling the way you think and you feel. I'm in complete control of that. I'm not in control of anyone else or anything else. I can't control COVID. I can't control other people. So I don't really, not too bothered about that stuff in terms of a control and judgment perspective. But I can control me, and that certainly wasn't my story. And yeah, that there's a period in my life just pretended that I didn't have any, that I wasn't feeling, and I think that's actually a place that a lot of people find themselves in. They talk about nothingness, or feeling really like a dull state. It might refer to it as boredom or apathy. It might be the language. And actually, that's worse than sadness, right? Because at least if you're sad, you're feeling something. There's a feeling there, and to feel is to live, right? So from a personality perspective, there's a lot of different sort of techniques or methods for looking at your own personality, and they're all out on the webinar free. One of which actually I should mention on here is the Insights Discovery Profiling, and what they talk about is extroverted thinking personality, so quite sort of strategic, visionary, driving, demanding. That's sort of the fiery red. Okay. Then you've got the extroverted feeling color energy, and that's like the charismatic, influencing, really sociable. That's the sunshine yellow. You've got like the compassionate, introverted feeling, earthy green energy, really sort of patient, really tolerant sort of energy. And then you've got the cool, what they refer to as the cool blue, so quite sort of meticulous, process-driven, quite questioning and challenging, quite sort of critical thinkers. Now, all four color energies are within us, okay, but we have different blends based on where we are on those continuums. So for example, my easiest one to access is the fiery red. So in these kind of situations, I'm quite good at sort of looking at the bigger picture, looking at the outlook, and being a bit strategic, looking forwards, and happy to sort of carry the family on the back and follow me team, let's go. And that's synonymous with the fiery red. However, there's with two young kids at home especially, actually dialing that down is really important for me. And again, that's only comes from having that awareness of what our strengths are, but equally behind every massive strength there's a big blind spot too. The opposite color to that is the earth green. And actually I've got a lot of friends, a lot of male friends that have this color energy in abundance, and they are loving lockdown. They've got small kids as well, some of them, and they're loving having time with the children, just having space. And they're quite happy to do a bit of work and then be with the kids, do a bit of work, be with the kids, and flip between the two, because of that strong selfless energy they have. So with small children in the house, you in lockdown, you're basically in servitude almost the whole time, apart from when they go to bed at night. And that earthy green energy, that compassionate energy, those that have that, it's sort of self-renewing, it's infinite, are really good at doing that. For me, 3 or 4 hours with the kids doing that kind of stuff, I sort of want to explode a little bit. I want to move towards that fiery red energy, which I suppose this is doing in many ways, talking about things that I'm passionate about, driving something forward, being purposeful, just to help me renew that really finite resource of green energy. And I think seeing them as your real strength energies as infinite, and your real low energies as finite, is really useful. Okay, so we are highly versatile, highly adaptable, but when we're acting outside of our strengths for too long, it drains us of energy. And I suppose the same is true of the sunshine yellow and the cool blue energy. The cool blue energy might be obsessed with social media and wanting to find out more and looking and being really critical about all the situation, a lot of judgment for things around them, people around them. And the yellow energy just wants to get distracted from all that and go and speak to some people. They're the ones on the Zoom course and all that, going, right, let's just chat about anything other than the things that are happening right now. So in this situation, I think it's really interesting where we do go. I think those with a really strong fiery red energy will feel a sense of purpose that's missing in their lives right now. That really, those goal-oriented people that define themselves by the progress that they make, that are sort of highly competitive, with nothing to compete with, doesn't feel like we're progressing if we're not leaving the house, right? So being aware of that is the crucial thing. The yellow energy, clearly it's really the hardest for them, actually. Those that have a strong yellow energy within their personality, because they can't go down to coffee shops or pubs or restaurants or student unions or wherever. You've got to artificially create this sort of sense of community, and that's really hard. That's really hard. And actually chucking yourself into creative projects, collaborative and creative projects. Great that we live in a technology age where we can do that kind of stuff. It's sort of the perfect antidote, I think, for that sunshine yellow energy. The earthly green energy, oddly, would be actually quite calm throughout this, but probably quite worrisome about what's happening and how everyone is. Wants to know how everyone is. And I suppose biggest advice I'd have to anyone with that strong earthly green preference is to check in on yourself. They'll be very, very busy checking in on everybody else, which is great. But actually just take the time to check in on you. It's something, especially in times of adversity, that green energy finds quite challenging. And in the blue energy, well, this isn't really a time to be critical. It's fantastic that we've got this sort of time and space to be on our own and to focus on our own personal interests, quite synonymous with the blue energy. But what's also quite synonymous is wanting certainty. The blue energy wants a level of predictability and certainty about the process or the path or the direction. Well, there is none. And I think that's in a very opposite way from that sunshine yellow energy. For those with this really strong blue preference, I think understanding that let's not move towards certainty here. Actually, what your biggest strength is finding things out, exploring, uncovering things, getting clarity. We'll find that clarity. Look for the things that you can be clear on. And I think look to the opposite energy for everybody. Look to the opposite energy, and look at how much you're retreating from society, how much you're not engaging with phone calls. You might be on a lot of the group calls and you mute yourself, turn your video off. That might be happening a lot with those with that really strong introverted thinking sort of preference. And actually, I'd say it's probably that blue energy and yellow energy that are the biggest risks to mental health for two very different reasons. One, for sort of removing themselves from society, going a bit too inward, introspective from the blue energy, and from the yellow energy, just lacking that people connection.
Sorry. Okay, so earlier on we're talking about emotional agility. What is it and what's its ultimate goal? How does it serve us?
Yeah, I have no idea really. So my I'll start with my sort of my role, if you like. Some people might call me a coach. If people ask me what I do, I help people allow themselves to be brilliant, to love what they do, to become who they are. Starts with me, moves to
Family.
My wife and kids, and then moves to everybody else. And I'm lucky enough, I work with sport, I work with the UN, I work with some big businesses, I work with some small businesses, I work in education, work in a whole diverse range of settings. But again, I'm quite a simple man. That's the sort of stuff that I do. And one thing that sort of keeps triggering, keeps coming up is this conversation around self-compassion.
Yeah.
So alongside this sort of rational, intellectual, conceptual understanding of myself, well, how about the emotional one as well? It's obviously a big part of my story of what I didn't have. I've been brilliant at creating the intellectual construct, but find this stuff a lot harder, and less so now, actually. And one particular TED talk that I watched, Susan David on emotional agility,
yeah.
There's a lot of meaning in there for me, actually. I mean, her stories is a number of stories really, but the one she opens with in the TED talk is about losing her father and being congratulated, being rewarded for showing no emotion.
Yeah.
And it's obviously sickening when you say it out loud. However, if you look at a lot of management practices, a lot of the way organisations are run, profit over people, etc., that it is the human as the machine is actually greatly valued. There's a lot of noise on us telling us to be quite mechanistic in the way we operate and telling us to be somebody else. So that ownership of who we are, that ownership of how we feel, it's quite tough, actually. It's really tough. And I think she describes it with great clarity and great flair, so I'm not going to do her a disservice by trying to define myself. But that concept of, as we talked about at the start, being quite fluid and dynamic and able to adapt to anything that sort of life chucks at you, and this is quite a big one, right? Being agile compared to being a fixed entity, quite a rigid entity. That's the big thing that comes up in coaching a lot of the time, is people feel that they're the ones that are holding them back, basically. And they feel like they can't grow, in one area, they can't learn in one area. And I have quite an optimistic view on human development, on what we're capable of, human potential. And I think we are all capable of whatever we choose to do. Should we put our mind to it? We're built with optimal functioning, but we get in our own way. And it's hard. It's really hard, because a lot of things externally are telling us to be someone that we're not. And actually, you've almost got to operate outside of that, which is Susan David's story. To be able to be far more growth orientated, and actually tap into a lot of the potential that you have. Like I do things now within my role, like you'll see I've drawn pictures and all that kind of stuff behind me. I'm going to camera, all of this stuff. I wouldn't have dreamed of doing that even in my 20s. I would have said, I can't draw. No one can read my writing, and I'm terrible at video. Okay. So those are 3 stories that I used to tell myself. They're not very helpful, really.
Yeah.
And this may not be a great video. They may not be good drawings, this may be illegible. And actually, I don't really care. like my story means a lot to me. When I talk to other people, they also draw meaning from it, and I draw meaning from their stories, and that for me is how the world goes round. But if on those coaching calls, I'm constantly thinking about how they're seeing me and defining myself as that, and reinforcing those stories that I tell myself of, I'm not sure if I'm very good at this, I'm not sure if I'm adding value. It's just noisy. Actually silencing that noise really helps, but you've got to stop telling yourself those questions, that reinforce this concept that we are fixed, or we are broken, or we're a fixed entity, or we're broken in some way, or for whatever reason we can't do the things we want to do. It's just self-sabotage, isn't it?
True. So with me, what I found out was, again, listening to Susan David, was about bottling your emotion versus brooding your emotions. And what I found with me was kind of brooding my emotions, not bottling it out. In the sense that it stopped me from kind of focusing or dealing with whatever was going on, but just sitting on it. That's what I found with me. And I'm glad I found it early.
Hugely, and I think for women the challenge is different. Women have been for centuries, for decades, suppressed in society, and are still suppressed. We are nowhere near equality. We are nowhere near parity. And actually, I don't know if we'll ever find the answer here, but men and women are treated differently. And I think how men they're given permission to do a lot more. So, like if he was just feeling angry, the man's angry, it's like, he's just being a man. The woman's angry, that's not on. Well, what's that about? And it's just almost been reinforced, whether you believe in genetics or whatever, in terms of the way we evolve as people. That doesn't matter, because the environment still promotes that. So I think definitely in terms of coaching women, what I find a lot is that there's a lot of suppressed emotions, and actually me providing a space where they can just let those feelings come out and talk about them and bring them into being. That's actually bloody powerful, and I find it deeply fulfilling and deeply rewarding, even though I don't have that level of empathy. There's a real recognition on my part. And then the other way with men, you see a lot of suicides of men in their 40s, a lot of suicides actually, a lot of mental health challenges, and it almost comes at a point in life where we look back and say, right, that's great, we've achieved all these goals and done what a man should do or whatever, but actually we're not happy, we're deeply discontented, and what comes with being a man obviously is you don't show any pain, you don't show, you never take a backward step and all that kind of nonsense, and actually we're doing the same thing but in a different way, and instead of that suppression, which feels like a far better way, right, of managing your feelings, they explode in quite different ways. And then for a lot of men, that there becomes a level of remorse with that, and a bottling up and a holding on, and it comes out in quite extreme ways, like severe mental health and suicide. Now, I'm not obviously saying the same equally isn't true for both genders as well, but those are the real patterns I find in the conversations I have.
So with this, how do you label your emotions in a way to better serve you? Talking about those who bottle it, those who brood over it.
So right at the start of lockdown, I found myself with a real sense of being quite overwhelmed.
Okay.
Quite overwhelmed, having to teach the kids, parent the kids, all that, and I've shared that responsibility with my wife, right? But a real sense of being overwhelmed. But I didn't have language for it. I didn't have the language for it, so I was feeling something.
Yeah.
And it felt like it was owning me. And I didn't know why, and I felt all these different emotions, from sadness to apathy to anger, right? Deep frustration and anger had come out of me in angry ways, and I'm thinking, well, where's that come from? But actually I had language for that, for anger, for all those things, so which is helpful. And language is the most important thing when it comes to your emotions. I think sitting there and then reflecting on that, I don't think that's the most helpful thing, but allowing your subconscious mind, the one that's driven by your principles, driven by your values and beliefs, to reflect on those when we're sleeping, when we're in the shower, when we go for walks, taking the time to do those things and clear your mind, then it starts to make the connections for you. And for me, having that language around, I feel a sense of hopelessness, I feel a sense of powerlessness, and I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, that was the key to the change. Before I said those three things out loud, I had no chance of navigating through it in a way that I was in control of. And actually what you'll see, no doubt, and what I see from a lot of people, and even a lot of the people that I coach actually, is that sense of hopelessness about what's happening with COVID, is that sense of powerlessness, I can't do anything about it, and then feeling this real sense of overwhelmness of either I need to be the hero here and step up at a global level, at the community level, or even in my household, or even for me, like I need to be doing more. This whole language, if I just do more, that's gonna make me happy. Because I'm gonna be doing something here. Well, that may not even save a life, right? And that might be our happy sort of measure of it. And it comes out of us in if we've not got that frame, that language around it, it comes out of us in ways that we really wouldn't choose to. Like we start to take control or try and control other people or other things around them because we feel like we are losing that sense of control. So instead of taking control of our own thoughts and emotion, we project that onto others. And we start to blame other people when things start to go wrong. And that sort of control, judgment, and that blame I'm seeing frequently, but from really good people, really good, kind-hearted, good-natured people, but who haven't necessarily got that same language for self-compassion, haven't necessarily got that language for what am I feeling right now? How am I processing this? Does it own me, or do I own it? And if I've not talked about it and brought it into being, I've actually no capacity to own it.
I don't think many people, I personally recently learned it myself, having this conversation with yourself. Not many people know how to do this conversation, to have like a mental inventory of yourself, to know your state at the moment. Are there some basic things that you need to, questions that you need to ask yourself to kind of know where you are, to kind of know your health, your mental health, for example, validate your feelings, know whether you have a hero syndrome about who am I, how can I help people, like you're always going, because there are different people who are saying, well, it is what it is, there's nothing I can do about it, and you're kind of just sitting down, letting things happen to them. And there's another group who feel like, I need to be the hero in this, I need to do something, and that is also taking a toll on them. I know I used to fall in that category, but now I know how to kind of have that conversation. Is there a basic way you can kind of let people have that conversation with themselves and be okay and know their state?
Yeah, so listen, what I'm not is a counsellor, psychologist, psychotherapist, any of those things really. So in terms of any kind of progressed mental health challenges or questions or whatever, I'm clearly not qualified to answer those. But the simple things often are the things that we miss, and are often the things that really work. And those are the things that come up in coaching, and they're really not rocket science. So when stuff happens like this, when stuff goes wrong, there's a lot of uncertainty around. I think focusing on what you can control, what is within your sphere of control and influence, is really important. I know it sounds a sort of overused cliche, it sounds really simple to say out loud or whatever, but it sort of is. The only thing you can control is yourself and how you think and feel. And most people I coach don't believe that they do. They don't believe that they are, or at least at the start of their coaching journey, they don't believe that they are in control of the way that they think and the way that they feel. Especially the latter, actually, and we are. But then, all equally, what are we not in control of? Well, let's start with the whole sort of global pandemic. What can we do to control that? Well, you and I sat here can't do a thing. So, like, yes, you've got the people that are moving towards that. Right, I'm going to be the hero here. I'm going to move towards it. That's fantastic in terms of your intention. But what resources are you taking with you? And then you've got those that are really shutting down from it, that are going, oh yeah, it is what it is, whatever. Well, how about the middle ground of let's find out as much as I can from a clarity, a fact perspective, not the echo chamber, not the noise, but the very simple things that will help me do the things that I'm in control of, that can make the biggest difference, whether it's at a community level, whether it's at a home level, whether it's with your friends. One thing I've definitely got more capacity to do now is to just check in with people, reach out. I can control that. If I was saying, oh, I'll just let this thing blow over, what I'm probably not doing is looking out for other people. But actually I'm saying, well, what can I control? What can I do? And I know I can't control the Prime Minister and the guidelines he puts on us. We actually live in Wales, and we've got two different lots of guidelines. We're going, oh, there's no clarity on what we're supposed to do here. And well, there's total clarity, because you've got some very straightforward guidelines, and you've got your own values. And every day you're going to have to make a decision that has consequences. And you've got two options. You can either use Boris's values and have a guess, take a punt on what he might do in your situation, and then blame him when it goes wrong. Or you can use your own principles, your own values to define that, and know that you'll be at total peace with the consequences of whatever decision you make. And I think those that are operating completely blindly either going, oh, I don't understand these, what do I do? Or I don't understand these, so therefore I'm going to do whatever I want. Neither of those two things is taking any personal responsibility. Neither of those two things is focusing on what you can control. Neither of those two things are using your values, your principles that prop you up as a human being to guide your decision making. And never before has it been important. Every day, actually, you're going to have to make a decision that has consequences. And even when you stay at home or go out the front door, well, there's only one person that's going to have to live with the consequences of that. And it sounds really simple, but I tell you what, that helps. It helps silence the noise of control, silence the noise of blame, silence the noise of judgment, and it brings real clarity to every decision that you make.
Interesting. I see some things behind you. You want to take us through that?
Yeah, so obviously I'm new to this whole video thing, quite enjoying it actually.
I see a caricature.
And I sort of storyboarded some stuff out this morning and then recognised, a bit like when I started teaching, just talking at the whiteboard is probably not the most helpful thing, so I'm sort of caught between the two. But I would like to share a couple of things with you, Eugenia, actually. One of those is this thing up on the top right, if you can read it here.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about Susan David's work around emotional agility.
Yeah.
And how it's sort of manifesting in how we're sort of responding to COVID. Well, this leans on another depth of personality, if you like, of motivation. Looking at the concept, we're motivated by two different things. One's intrinsic within us, and one is extrinsic with stuff around us. Now, we've just had a conversation about what it means to focus on the internal valves of the human system, like values, like thoughts, like feelings, consciousness, everything we're in control of, right? Those are intrinsic. And all the other stuff, like whatever Boris is sort of feeding into us or whatever it might be, those are external to us, those are extrinsic. And again, based on a sort of sliding scale of a continuum, based on where we are in terms of which drivers we pull on, the extrinsic ones and the intrinsic ones. There's no right or wrong here, but it's just a lens for looking at how we're driven and how we respond in situations like this. Down the left here, we've got power, status, money, and the easy life. They are common extrinsic drivers of the modern sort of, especially in Western society, the modern way of being, way of living. So we are encouraged actually to, whether it be on our LinkedIn profile, sort of beef it up a bit and make us look a little bit better than what we are. And I run a very small company, it's just me. A lot of people do the same, that it's as if they sort of employ hundreds of people on there. And that's driven by this motivation for having some kind of appearing quite powerful in any room or any dialogue that they operate in. The next one is status. So we live in a highly status-driven society. It's one of my big fears around my little girl, is how she's going to navigate the social media space and school and all those other things, when every sort of marketing message that is pushed at her is telling her to be someone that she isn't, telling her to be popular and outgoing and all of these things, when actually she may not want that for herself, but in order to feel a sense of belonging, she may feel that she needs to have that. She might value that more than she values really meaningful relationships. So this sort of concept of, like, so what's the idea of how I, as a parent, as a dad, how I help her navigate that, but it's up to her to navigate that, not the parent. It's a big fear that I have, actually, and that's very much in line with sort of, how do I look over who I am? Those that have got a number of meaningful relationships in their life that they can pick up the phone to, where they're not judged, they can speak about how they feel. They're doing all right in COVID. They're doing all right in lockdown. Those that don't, that define themselves more by how they look, by their status, and are still the ones sharing really positive photos on Facebook, but behind the Facebook identity, they're not doing so great. They're struggling. actually, and it's far harder for them to ask for help as a consequence. Money. So on the right here, Eugenia, you've got all the extrinsic drivers. Now I've linked the guy's Edward Deci, that's his name. Two guys, Deci and Ryan, did some work around intrinsic motivation. Okay, and they looked at 4 things that drive us: purpose, having a sense of purpose, having meaningful relationships, having autonomy, and having a sense of mastery, something that we're sort of getting really good at. And all I've done is link them to a lot of common things that I see in the people that I coach that appear to be motivated by something external to them. They wouldn't choose to be, they don't want to be. But this helps sort of shine a bit of a light, put a lens on it. So, for example, the opposite of mastery, the opposite of focusing on that growth-oriented individual that we all are, is the easy life. So those in lockdown that sort of sticking the TV on, binging on sort of Netflix or whatever, they're shying away from actually moving towards a bit of hard work because no one's watching right now. And if no one's watching in the intrinsic world, you do what you want. Whereas actually in the intrinsic world, I'm watching, I'm caring, and I care about how I spend my time. Not to say that having a bit of chill out time, watching a bit of TV is no bad thing for anyone. It's just not obviously something I do that regularly, because it is in terms of a balanced life. But it's where the focus is the focus on having an easy life. Like people go, oh, I wish I had loads of money. I just have such an easy life. Well, a lot of people that are overnight millionaires are dreadfully unhappy. And no doubt, like you get a real sense of pride actually from things that you master, things you get really good at, and we're all capable of mastering something. It's about finding that strength, finding that passion, right? And autonomy being a substitute to money. I'd love to live in a world that had no currency. And every individual, all they were after is the ability to think and behave independently from anyone else, to be their own individual. But money gets in the way of that, because it's like, well, no, I need money. Why do you need money? Or to get a car, to get a house, to get this, to give me autonomy. Well, anyone's got autonomy. You find people on the streets that have great independent thought, like they're incredibly creative, dynamic people. They have autonomy in their life. They just don't have resources, and we mistake resources for actually the internal resources that we already have. Talked about status over relationships. It's a huge one. But this concept of meaningful relationships, I think, comes up a lot in the coaching conversations. The difference between a friendship and or an acquaintance and a genuinely meaningful relationship, someone that we can actually be emotionally intimate with. And by intimate, I mean where we're not judged, we're not judging each other in the process of that conversation. That's very rare. It's actually very rare. That people have a lot of those in their lives, or at least maybe don't acknowledge that they do sometimes. And the top one is power versus purpose. So actually having that real guider, that rudder, if you like, in your life to give you that sort of sense of purpose is fundamental to keep the boat upright, keep the boat going. And without that, you find yourself wanting to control more things, whether it be build an empire or run a big business or whatever. But you might get there, you might achieve that goal, and when you get there, it doesn't feel anything like what you thought it would do. Because power is not the important thing. I think generally people that are looking at the end of their life and they look back at the legacy on their life, it's more about why they were here. And having that sense of purpose and how much they lived that sense of purpose in their way of being. Now, I share it because in times like this, it absolutely shines a magnifying glass and a sunlight and a floodlight on what we are driven by. And those that are driven by other things, be them material, be them status, be them otherwise, are struggling to find that right now. They're struggling to find those resources. And actually a far more meaningful journey for those people to go on would be to get off that treadmill of chasing your goals or whatever it might be, and focus on why are you here? How many meaningful relationships you have in your life? How much you control the way that you think and feel, or you feel you need extrinsic things to do that, and how much you're focusing on doing things you're passionate about, doing things you're great at. I suppose there's a huge relationship there with the Japanese concepts of the ikigai, of doing things you're great at, doing things people will pay money for, doing things that the world needs.
I think it's true, because especially in this moment, it gives you a chance to reflect and admit what is meaningful in your life. And you kind of realize where you were at first, whether you were power focused or purpose focused, or you were status focused or in a relationship. And I think if we just take, again, a mental inventory, you can actually realize what is meaningful to you, and going forward, you could use that to still kind of build yourself. I remember before this interview, I was saying stuff like surviving COVID-19, and you corrected me, you said thriving through COVID-19. Yeah, and it shows how powerful words are, what we say to ourselves, especially this time. What are some of the things you think we could say to ourselves to become more emotional, agile, or something like that?
But I think paying attention to the words that we currently use, I think it's crucially important. We talked about the stories we tell ourselves, but just from a basic level of, we feel like we need a holiday. We feel like we need to go to the pub with our mates. If you're a grandparent, for example, you feel like you need to hug your grandkids or whatever. We feel like there's needs missing in our life, and we project that onto everything else. So we wake up in the morning and say, right, we really need to cut the lawn, or I really need to get that piece of work done, or I need to do this. I think recognizing that language and operating with far cleaner language is probably the most useful and helpful thing. I have very few needs in my life, which keeps it very, very simple. Once you've got them down here: food, water, sleep, and a whole lot of love. That's it. That's all I need.
Basic needs, yeah.
And I think in times like this, where I said at the start about sort of lowering all of our expectations, have we got those things, or have I got those things in my life? Yes, I do. I have them in abundance, actually. And I have a lot more things than that. So those lot more things feel incredible. Whereas those people that are telling themselves, oh, I need a holiday, or I need to spoil myself, or I need to be eating more chocolate right now, whatever the language is, it's unhelpful, because you might get that, you might put that holiday in, or what, and you still don't feel this sense of joy or happiness that you do when you eradicate all those needs. I know it sounds silly, but we say what we believe, and we believe what we say. So the words that we use, be them the stories we tell ourselves, or even the extreme language. So you'll be hearing a lot right now. This is bizarre. This is madness. This is crazy. This is unbelievable. I can't believe what's happening to me right now. That's a projection. It's a projection of feeling out of control. So far more useful language is saying, I feel, or the feeling I'm feeling right now is out of control. In fact, there's an important differentiation, actually. Just adding the word feeling in. So a lot of people say, I am really angry. You say, well, you are angry, like you're angry all the time, like a fixed thing that never changes, or you are feeling anger right now. And this concept of dissociating our feelings from ourselves helps us bring them into being, look at them, do things with them, own them rather than they own us. If our language is I am this right now, It's very different. But yeah, you'll be hearing a lot of that. Like the whole never, absolutely, always, the extreme language, which is just unhelpful. And a lot of news stories out there saying this is the absolute fact. Scientists have said this. And quite often, most things that you read they're a little bit true, and a little bit of fiction in there. And it's very hard to differentiate between what is and what isn't. And everyone's craving certainty right now, and everyone wants to talk like they know what they're talking about and talk with great certainty. I have no idea. I have no idea what's going to happen. All we can be is prepared for every situation. And by stripping yourself back and saying whatever happens, be it over the next 12, 18 months with COVID-19 globally, I'm going to be okay and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think it boils down to being kind with yourself and having honest conversations with yourself. And during this time, there was this picture going around where people, it had 3 different women, and it said, at the end of COVID-19, you either come out as fat or as slim because you're stressed or whatever, or pregnant. And I looked at it, I was like, why do I have to choose amongst these 3 options? Why can't I just come out as myself? Why? Like, you kind of fix yourself in a fact, like, I'll come out either as this or that. But I don't think that is the totality. I don't know, maybe that's my thinking, but I don't think I have only 3 choices to come out of. That is me.
So social media is challenging, isn't it? I have no idea how to navigate it. I'm not on most of those platforms, or I'm on them, but I don't consume everything that comes in. And it must be very hard to navigate, because there's a lot of advice, there's a lot of things thrown at you. Be this, do this. This is like, there's the 3 ways to do X or the 3 ways to do Y. Yeah, I think consuming that is actually grossly unhelpful. And consuming it in a very different way is one answer. Another answer is look inside and find out what yours is, and draw meaning from what's going on around you, and a little bit of everything, right? Whether it be books or TED Talks or podcasts, but to not be caught in the echo chamber, to keep being open and curious about new ideas and new ways of looking at things, because otherwise we keep reinforcing our own state of being. We reinforce the way that we think and feel by consuming things that tell us that anyway. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I feel very lucky to be able to cut myself off from that, but I get people with a bit more time on their hands get caught, especially what's going on in the US right now, things like that, get caught in this trail of I want to listen more, I want to hear more, I want to digest more. And I think just being aware of the dangers of how much it owns you rather than you own yourself is crucial to that.
Yeah, I think one thing I've been grateful for is the way I'm learning to listen to myself. And even though all those motivational things are from a good intention, I'm trying to find my rhythm in it. For example, if they're singing in a C minor, I maybe doing A major or something. That's my perspective. I just have to find my rhythm in that good intention. And that, I think, is helping me. And it's a bit of trial and error. And I'm grateful for that experience, actually. I'm learning a lot. So thank you very much, Gary. Any last thing you want to share with us? Any thoughts you want to share with us?
Listen, I think my best advice for anyone right now is lower your expectations and give yourself a break. And I think if we only did those 2 things, lower your expectations about everything that's going on in your life right now and let yourself off the hook a little bit. And if everyone did that, we wouldn't only have far improved mental health out there, but we'd have a lot of people that come out of whatever this is, they come out the other side far stronger as a consequence, and as a result, far more emotionally agile, right, to face whatever comes next.
Yeah, but to add to that, maybe not to the extreme where you just sit down when you're binging on Netflix 24/7. So
yeah, it's all about the meaning that we take from let yourself off the hook, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I think even those people that binge on Netflix, I think deep down there is a feeling there of being hopeless, and feeling powerless, and feeling overwhelmed. And listen, it comes out behaviorally, it comes out of all of us in different ways, right? And I think letting yourself off the hook to know that, like, it's okay to feel all of those things, it's probably going to make you less likely to just move away from it and distract yourself from it, and move you towards focusing on what you can control, which is you.
Exactly. Perfect. Thank you very much, Gary, for this. Really enjoyed it, and wish you a good week.
Thanks, Eugenia.